Esther thought she was alone when she started cleaning the executive ballroom at 1:17 a.m. Earbuds in, mop set aside, music too soft for anyone else to hear. But someone was watching. And 3 minutes later, the most powerful man in Lumina Holdings whispered to his head of security, "Bring her to me." She had no idea that moment would change her life. Kim Ming opened the manila folder at exactly 9:03 a.m., and Esther David's carefully constructed life shattered. She'd been sitting in his office for 3 minutes, hands folded in her lap, still wearing the black cleaning uniform from her overnight shift. The Lumina Holdings logo was embroidered over her heart, small, discreet, designed to make staff invisible. For 6 months, that invisibility had been her salvation. Now Kim was looking at her like he could see straight through every wall she'd built. Sandra Esther David Maxwell, he read from the first document. His voice was measured, careful. Born in Seoul to Nigerian immigrants. Graduated top of your class from Korea University Business School. Hired by Hansung Financial as a forensic analyst at 24. He looked up. Impressive credentials for someone currently scrubbing toilets. Esther's throat closed. She forced herself to breathe, to think. He couldn't know. There was no way he could. Kim flipped to the next page. A newspaper clipping, 3 years old. Her face stared back at her from the photocopy. Younger, more confident, caught mid-stride on courthouse steps. The headline was in Korean, or "The Whistleblower Who Destroyed Her Mentor." The Hansung Financial Scandal, Kim continued, as casually as if he were discussing the weather. Your managing director, Han Jae-sung, had been embezzling from clients for 8 years. 50 billion Korean wons won. You discovered it. You reported it. You testified against him. He paused. You sent your own mentor to prison. The room spun slightly. Esther gripped the arms of her chair, anchoring herself. If you're going to fire me, I'm not firing you. That stopped her. She looked up, met his eyes for the first time since entering the office. They were dark, intense, completely unreadable. Kim closed the folder, set it aside, and leaned forward. I'm offering you a job. Your real job. The one you trained for. The one you're brilliant at. I don't, her voice cracked. She cleared her throat, tried again. I don't understand. I've been looking for you for 18 months, Kim said. Ever since I read about the Hansung case. I wanted to hire you then, but you disappeared. Changed your name, deleted your social media, went completely off-grid. He smiled faintly. You're very good at hiding, Esther. Or should I call you Sandra? Esther, she said automatically. I use Esther now. Esther then. He stood, moved to the window overlooking Gangnam. Morning traffic crawled below, a river of metal and ambition. I run a consulting practice. Private clients. Asset recovery, fraud investigation, financial forensics. The kind of work you used to do, but for people the traditional system fails. People who can't afford 500,000 Korean wons an hour lawyers. People whose abusers know exactly how to hide money where courts can't find it. Esther's mind raced. You want me to help you operate outside the law. I want you to help me get results the law can't provide. Kim turned back to face her. The work exists in gray zones. It's not always strictly legal. But it helps people who have nowhere else to turn. People like Mrs. Park. Who? He picked up another folder from his desk, opened it. Park Sun-hee, 62 years old. Her son died in a factory accident 6 months ago. His business partner claimed the company was drowning in debt, that there was nothing to inherit. Mrs. Park received nothing. Not even her son's truck. Kim slid the folder across the desk toward her. But I don't believe him. I think he's hiding assets. I think he's stealing from a dead man's mother. Despite herself, Esther reached for the folder. Her fingers, trained to trace money through the most complex systems, practically trembled as they touched the financial statements inside. I can't do this, she whispered, but she was already reading. Already seeing the discrepancies. Already recognizing the patterns. You already are, Kim observed. Your brain won't let you look at those numbers without analyzing them. It's who you are, Esther. Not the woman in the cleaning uniform. The woman who's brilliant enough to expose fraud that fooled regulators for 8 years. She looked up sharply. And that brilliance destroyed my career. Made me unemployable. I spent 3 years learning to be invisible because being visible cost me everything. Or, Kim said quietly, being visible revealed who was worth keeping in your life. The Hansung prosecution called you a hero. The financial industry called you a traitor. I call you exactly what I need. Why? The question burst out of her. Why do you care? You don't know me. You watched me. What, cleaning your office for 6 months? That doesn't. I watched you dance. The words landed like a confession. Esther's breath caught. Last night, Kim continued, his voice lower now, more personal. The charity gala cleanup. You thought you were alone. You put in earbuds and you transformed. For 3 minutes, I watched you move through that ballroom like you owned it. Like you'd forgotten you were supposed to be invisible. Like you were finally, completely yourself. Heat flooded Esther's face, embarrassment, anger, something else she couldn't name. That's why I'm offering you this, Kim said. Because I saw who you really are. And I think you're tired of hiding her. Esther stood abruptly, the chair scraping against expensive flooring. This is insane. You don't know what you're asking. The risk, the exposure, I'm asking you to help Mrs. Park. Kim's voice cut through her spiral. One case. Consult on one case. Find out if her son's partner is stealing from her. If he is, we'll recover what's hers. If he's not, you walk away and go back to being invisible. He paused. But Esther, if you walk out of this office without even looking at those numbers, we both know you'll regret it. She looked down at the folder still open on his desk. At the financial statements that her trained eye could already see were wrong. At the pattern of theft hidden in plain numbers. She thought about courthouse steps and camera flashes. About her mentor's daughter screaming traitor as Han Jae-sung was led away in handcuffs. About 3 years of scrubbing floors and making herself small and pretending she didn't miss the work that had once defined her. About dancing last night when she thought no one was watching. One case, she heard herself say. Kim's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. Relief, maybe. Or recognition. One case, he agreed. After that, the choice is yours. But as Esther picked up Mrs. Park's financial records, as her fingers automatically began sorting through pages with the muscle memory of someone who'd been born to do this work, she suspected the choice had already been made. The secret was out. The question was, what would she do with it? 12 hours earlier, Esther had been nobody. Just another face in a sea of cleaning staff, moving through Lumina Holdings' executive floors with practiced invisibility. The charity gala had ended at 11 p.m., and by midnight, most of the other cleaners had finished their sections and left. Esther preferred the late shift. Fewer people. Fewer questions. Fewer chances of being recognized by someone who might remember her face from 3 years ago. The ballroom was her final task. 30 tables, each seating 12. Crystal champagne flutes abandoned like memories. The lingering scent of expensive perfume and even more expensive wine. She'd learned not to think about the cost of a single place setting at these events. Korean 1200-0001, maybe more. Enough to feed her for a month. She started with the perimeter tables, collecting glasses and plates onto her service cart. The work was methodical, mindless. Exactly what she needed. For 3 years, mindless had been her goal. Wake up. Clean. Sleep. Don't think about the career she'd destroyed. Don't think about the mentor she'd sent to prison. Don't think about the woman she used to be. But tonight, something felt different. Maybe it was the fullness of the moon visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Maybe it was exhaustion making her reckless. Maybe it was just that she was tired of being invisible. She pulled out her earbuds, the cheap ones she'd bought at a convenience store, not the AirPods she used to own, and connected them to her phone. Her finger hovered over the music app. She had playlists from her old life, songs she hadn't listened to in 3 years because they reminded her of being confident, successful, seen. Tonight, she pressed play. The beat started low, building. Something with drums and bass that made her hips sway before her brain could object. She was supposed to be working. She was supposed to be invisible. But the ballroom was empty, and the security cameras didn't cover this corner, and just for a moment, just for 3 minutes, she wanted to remember what it felt like to take up space. Her body moved. Not consciously at first. Just a sway, then a roll of her shoulders. The champagne flute in her hand became part of the movement as she placed it on her cart. And then she forgot about the cart entirely. Esther David, invisible cleaning woman, began to dance. Not the kind of dancing you do at clubs to impress strangers. The kind you do alone when you think no one's watching. When your body remembers freedom. When you're not performing for anyone except yourself. Her eyes closed. The ballroom disappeared, the borrowed wealth, the reminder of everything she'd lost. There was just the music. Just the movement. Just her body remembering how to feel alive. She spun slowly, arms lifting, head tilting back. The chandelier light caught in the crystals above, throwing fractured rainbows. Her hips moved in ways the shapeless uniform was never designed to accommodate. Fluid. Unconscious. Honest. For 3 minutes, Esther forgot to be invisible. She didn't see Kim Ming standing in the doorway. Didn't see him stop breathing. Didn't see him pull out his phone and open a saved news article from 3 years ago, comparing the woman dancing in his ballroom to the woman on courthouse steps. She didn't see recognition flash across his face. Didn't see him turn to his head of security, Lee, who'd followed him down to retrieve forgotten documents. Didn't hear him whisper, "Find out everything about her. Real name, background, why she's here. I want it on my desk by morning." She didn't see him watch her for 3 full minutes, transfixed. She just danced. And when the song ended, she opened her eyes, remembered where she was, and felt shame flood through her. She'd been reckless. Unprofessional. Visible. She grabbed her cart and finished cleaning as quickly as possible, desperate to leave, to disappear back into the safety of being nobody. In the doorway, Kim Ming made a decision that would change both their lives. If you're still watching, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next is going to blow your mind. This isn't just a story about a cleaning woman and a CEO. It's about what happens when the person you're hiding from is the only person who sees you. Now, sitting in Kim's office with her past laid out in manila folders, Esther understood. He hadn't just seen her dance. He'd seen her. All of her. The brilliant forensic analyst. The woman who'd destroyed her mentor. The ghost who'd been hiding in his building for 6 months. "I need time," she managed. "To think about this. Take all the time you need." Kim reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a business card. When he handed it to her, their fingers brushed. The contact was brief, but something electric passed between them. Esther looked at the card. Simple. Elegant. Kim Ming, CEO. A phone number. An email address. And on the back, in handwritten Korean, "You deserve to be seen." She left his office, legs unsteady. The other cleaning staff were arriving for the day's shift, and they nodded at her. The night girl, the quiet one who kept to herself. None of them knew who she used to be. None of them would believe it if they did. Esther took the subway to her Gashawon in Sinchon. The tiny room, barely bigger than a closet, had been home for 3 years. 100 square feet of space. A narrow bed. A desk. A hot plate for ramen. Everything she owned fit in 2 suitcases, ready to disappear again if necessary. She sat on her bed and stared at Kim's business card until the words blurred. 3 years ago, she'd been Sandra Esther David Maxwell, rising star at Hansung Financial. The youngest senior analyst in the firm's history. The protege of Han Jae-sung, the legendary managing director who could trace money through systems so complex that regulators gave up trying. He'd taught her everything. How to read financial statements like novels. How to spot patterns in chaos. How to follow money through shell companies and offshore accounts until there was nowhere left for it to hide. What he hadn't taught her was that he was using those same skills to steal from clients. She discovered it by accident. A discrepancy in a client account that didn't make sense. She'd mentioned it to Director Han casually, expecting him to fix it. Instead, his face had gone pale, and he'd told her to leave it alone. That she was misunderstanding the structure. That sometimes the rules were too rigid for effective wealth management. But Esther's brain couldn't leave it alone. She'd kept digging. Kept finding more discrepancies. Kept uncovering a pattern of theft that had been going on for 8 years. 50 billion Korean wons won, roughly $37 million, stolen from elderly clients who trusted Han Jae-sung with their retirement savings. She'd gone to him first. Given him a chance to come clean, to return the money, to fix it before she had to report it. He'd begged her not to destroy him. Promised to return everything. Said his daughter was getting married, his son was in medical school, his wife had cancer. He'd made a mistake, but he could fix it if she just gave him time. She'd given him 2 weeks. He'd spent those 2 weeks moving money even deeper offshore, making it harder to recover. And when she'd finally reported it to the financial regulators, he'd claimed she was the one who'd been stealing. That she'd fabricated evidence to cover her own crimes. That she was an ambitious junior analyst trying to take his position. The investigation had nearly destroyed her. 6 months of depositions, forensic audits, public scrutiny. Her face on every news channel. Reporters camped outside her apartment. Former colleagues refusing to speak to her. Her parents back in Lagos begging her to come home, to leave Korea, to stop fighting. But she'd had the truth. And eventually, the truth had won. Han Jae-sung had been sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. His assets were seized. His clients received partial restitution. And Esther had been vindicated. Except vindication didn't pay rent. Didn't get her hired at any other financial firm in Korea. Didn't stop the whispers that followed her everywhere. Traitor, snitch, the woman who destroyed her mentor for personal gain. She'd changed her name, deleted her social media, taken the only job she could find that didn't require references. Night shift cleaning at Lumina Holdings. For 3 years, she'd been invisible. Safe. Nobody. Until last night, when she'd danced. Esther pulled out her phone, typed a message to the number on Kim's card. I need to know what you really want from me. Not the job description. The truth. His response came within seconds. I want to help people the system fails. I need someone brilliant enough to find what others can't. And I want to give you back what you lost, purpose, expertise, the ability to be yourself. Meet me for dinner. Let me explain properly. She should say no. Should maintain distance. Should remember that every time she'd trusted someone with her real self, it had cost her. But she was tired of being invisible. Tired of pretending her brain didn't light up when she saw financial statements. Tired of hiding the woman who'd been brave enough to testify even when it destroyed her. She texted back. When and where? 2 hours later, Esther stood outside a restaurant in Itaewon, wearing the only civilian clothes she owned that weren't 3 years old. Dark jeans, a cream blouse she'd bought at a second-hand shop, her old leather jacket that had somehow survived multiple moves. Her hair was down, natural curls framing her face. If this was going to be a disaster, at least she'd look like herself when it happened. Kim was waiting at a corner table. He'd changed too, no longer in the formal suit from their morning meeting. Dark jeans, a white button-down, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked younger like this. More real. You came, he said, standing as she approached. I'm still not sure why. Esther slid into the seat across from him. The restaurant was small, intimate. Traditional Korean food with a modern twist. The kind of place locals came to, not tourists. Because you want to know if I'm serious. Kim poured her water from the pitcher on the table. The gesture was simple, but something about it felt careful. Considered. Because you want to know if this is real or if I'm going to use you the way everyone else has. His directness caught her off guard. You've thought about this. I've thought about nothing else since I watched you dance. He met her eyes. I need you to understand something, Esther. What I'm offering isn't charity. It's not me feeling sorry for the fallen whistleblower. I'm offering you this because you're exactly who I need for the work I do. Maybe the only person who can do it. Tell me about the work, she said. The real work. Not the sales pitch. So he did. Kim had inherited Lumina Holdings from his father 5 years ago. On paper, it was legitimate, boutique investment consulting, wealth management for high-net-worth clients. But his father had also run other operations. Gray market operations that existed in the spaces between legal and illegal. My father helped people, Kim explained. But he helped them in ways that made him dangerous. He operated through intimidation, through violence when necessary. When he died, and yes, it was because of that work, I had a choice. Continue his legacy or build something different. So you chose different? I chose useful. Kim leaned forward. I kept the connections, the resources, the knowledge of how money really moves. But I redirected it. I use it to help people the system fails. People who've been stolen from. People whose abusers know how to hide assets where lawyers can't find them. People who can't afford 500,000 Korean wons an hour legal teams. Esther processed this. You're talking about operating in legal gray zones. Using methods that wouldn't hold up in court. I'm talking about getting results that matter more than legal purity. Kim's voice was steady, certain. The law is designed to protect people with resources. Everyone else gets procedure. Process. The promise that if they wait long enough, file the right paperwork, maybe justice will come. Meanwhile, they suffer. That sounds like something my mentor said before I turned him in. Your mentor stole from vulnerable people to enrich himself, Kim countered. I recover stolen assets to help victims. Can you really not see the difference? I see a difference, Esther admitted. I'm just not sure the law does. The food arrived: grilled mackerel, banchan, perfectly cooked rice. They ate in silence for a moment, and Esther found herself studying Kim, really looking at him for the first time since their meeting that morning. He was handsome, but that wasn't what caught her attention. It was the way he moved, efficient, controlled, like someone who'd learned early that wasted motion could be dangerous. It was the scar barely visible above his collar. It was the way his eyes tracked the room even while talking to her, always aware of exits, of threats. If you're still watching, then you already feel the tension growing between Esther and Kim. That careful dance between trust, danger, and something neither of them is ready to name yet. But I want to know what you think. Do you trust Kim's intentions? Or do you think Esther just stepped into something far darker than she realizes? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading all of them. And if this story has you hooked already, make sure you hit that like button so YouTube knows to keep pushing this series out to more people who love Afro-Korean drama just like you. This wasn't just a wealthy CEO playing at helping people. This was someone who'd survived something. Your father, she said. How did he really die? Kim set down his chopsticks. Business meeting that turned violent. He was trying to negotiate protection for a client whose ex-husband had connections to some very dangerous people. The ex-husband brought those people to the meeting. My father walked in expecting negotiation. He walked out in a body bag. I'm sorry. So was I. For 2 years after, I couldn't enter certain restaurants without dissociating. I'd see the table layouts, smell the food, and I'd be back in that moment when they called to tell me he wasn't coming home. He paused. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand. The work I do carries risk. Not just legal risk, real danger. And I won't lie to you about that. Esther felt something shift between them. This wasn't a job offer anymore. It was something more honest. More human. Mrs. Park, she said. Tell me more about her case. Kim pulled out his phone, showed her photos. An elderly Korean woman with kind eyes and work-worn hands. Her son's obituary. Financial statements from the landscaping business. Her son Min-woo died 6 months ago. Fell from scaffolding at a construction site. His business partner, Lee Sang-jun, claims the company is 200 million Korean wons won in debt. That there's nothing to inherit. But Mrs. Park knows her son was careful with money. She knows he'd mentioned buying new equipment, expanding the business. She thinks Lee is lying, but she can't prove it. Esther studied the financial statements on his phone. Even from the small screen, she could see discrepancies. Revenue that didn't match invoicing patterns. Expenses that seemed inflated. Classic signs of skimming. Her brain lit up. The same way it always had when presented with a puzzle. The same way it had when she'd first noticed the irregularities in Director Han's client accounts. I can find it, she heard herself say. If he's hiding assets, I can trace them. I know you can. Kim's smile was genuine. That's why I'm asking. And if I do this? If I help Mrs. Park, then you'll have given an elderly woman justice. You'll have used your skills to help someone who had nowhere else to turn. And you'll have proven to yourself that what happened 3 years ago doesn't define you. That you can still do what you're brilliant at. Esther thought about her Gashwan room. About ramen dinners and secondhand clothes and 3 years of making herself small. About dancing last night when she thought no one was watching. About Kim Ming seeing her anyway. One case, she said. I'll do Mrs. Park's case. After that, we'll see. One case, Kim agreed. But the way he looked at her, like she'd just given him something precious, made Esther wonder if one case would ever be enough. They talked for another hour. About the clients he typically helped. About the methods he used, some legal, some existing in spaces the law hadn't quite caught up to yet. About the team he'd built. About why he needed someone with Esther's specific skills. Most forensic accountants are bound by what they can present in court, Kim explained. They find evidence, but only evidence obtained through proper channels. You understand how money really moves. You can see patterns others miss. And you're not afraid to look where others won't. I'm terrified, Esther corrected. I'm just tired of letting fear make my decisions. Kim paid the bill, waved away her attempt to split it, and they walked out into the Seoul night. Itaewon was alive with energy. Street vendors selling hotteok and tteokbokki. Groups of friends spilling out of bars. Couples walking hand in hand. For 3 years, Esther had avoided this part of the city. Too many memories of her old life. Too many places she used to go with colleagues who no longer spoke to her. Now, walking beside Kim, she felt something shift. Maybe she could reclaim this city. Maybe she could stop hiding. Can I ask you something? Kim said as they walked toward the subway station. You've been asking me things all night. This is more personal. He stopped, turned to face her. Why did you testify? You knew it would cost you everything. You gave Director Han a chance to come clean, and he didn't take it. You could have walked away. Stayed silent. Kept your career. Why didn't you? Esther looked up at him. The streetlights caught in his dark eyes, and she saw genuine curiosity there. Not judgment, not suspicion, just wanting to understand. Because the clients he stole from were people like Mrs. Park, she said quietly. Elderly people who'd trusted him with their life savings. People who couldn't afford to lose what he took. And if I stayed silent, I'd be saying their suffering mattered less than my comfort. I couldn't live with that. Even though living with the consequences nearly destroyed you? Even though. She started walking again. I don't regret testifying. I regret that the system punished me for it. I regret that doing the right thing meant losing everything. But I don't regret the choice itself. Kim caught up to her. That's why I need you, Esther. That moral clarity. That willingness to pay the cost of doing what's right. Most people talk about ethics. You live them, even when it hurt. They reached the subway entrance. Esther's train would take her back to Sinchon, back to her tiny room, back to the life she'd built from the wreckage of her old one. I'll see you tomorrow, Kim said. 9 a.m. I'll have Mrs. Park's complete records ready for you. Esther nodded, started down the stairs, then stopped. Turned back. Kim. Yes. Thank you. For seeing me. For remembering who I was. For offering me a way back. His expression softened. You never stopped being that person, Esther. You just convinced yourself you had to hide her. I'm not offering you a way back. I'm offering you a way forward. Esther rode the subway home with those words echoing in her mind. A way forward. Not back to who she'd been, but toward who she could become. She lay awake most of the night, staring at the ceiling of her Goshawan, thinking about financial statements and elderly women and the difference between legal and right. Thinking about Kim Ming watching her dance. Thinking about the choice she'd already made, even if she hadn't fully admitted it yet. At 6 a.m., she texted him. I'm in. Not just for one case. For the work. Whatever it takes. His response came immediately. I'll have an office ready for you by this afternoon. Welcome back, Esther Maxwell. Mrs. Park arrived at Kim's office 3 days later. She came prepared, a worn shopping bag filled with 3 years of business records, photographs of her son, receipts carefully organized in plastic sleeves. She spoke in Korean, her hands trembling slightly as she laid everything out on the conference table. Esther listened, understanding every word. She'd grown up in Seoul, born to Nigerian immigrant parents who'd moved to Korea before she was born. Korean was her first language, English her second, Yoruba a distant third learned from her grandmother's phone calls. It was one of the things that had made her valuable at Hansung Financial. The ability to work with both Korean and international clients seamlessly. My son was a good man, Mrs. Park said through tears. He worked hard. He saved money. He took care of me. Now Lee Sang-jun tells me there's nothing. That Min-woo left only debt. But I know my son. He wouldn't do that. Esther reached across the table, took Mrs. Park's hand. The gesture surprised her. She hadn't touched a client with compassion in 3 years. Hadn't allowed herself to care. I'll find the truth, she promised in Korean. Whatever it is, you'll know. After Mrs. Park left, Kim brought the business records to a small office he'd set up for Esther. It had been a storage room until 2 days ago. Now it held a desk, 2 monitors, forensic accounting software she hadn't had access to in years, and a proper ergonomic chair. I had IT set up secure servers, Kim explained. Everything you do here is protected. Encrypted. If you need any additional software or resources, tell me. Esther sat at the desk, ran her hands over the keyboard. For 3 years, she'd worked with a second-hand laptop and pirated Excel. This was professional-grade equipment, the kind she'd used at Hansung Financial. Why are you doing all this? She asked. Because I told you, I need you. Kim leaned against the doorframe. But also because I remember what it's like to have your tools taken away. To lose access to the work that defines you. I'm giving you yours back. He left her alone with the documents, and Esther began to work. The first hour was torture. Her hands shook. Her vision blurred. 3 years of deliberately not using these skills, of making herself forget, meant everything felt rusty. Uncertain. But then muscle memory kicked in. Training reasserted itself. And suddenly she was flying. The landscaping business records were a mess. Deliberately so, she realized. Lee Sang-jun had been sloppy in some areas, meticulous in others. The pattern suggested someone who knew enough about accounting to hide theft, but not enough to do it elegantly. She started with cash flow. Revenue coming in versus expenses going out. The business had been profitable, very profitable. But the profit wasn't showing up in the company accounts. Then she mapped the expenses. Found invoices for equipment that had never been purchased. Found payments to subcontractors who didn't exist. Found a pattern of small amounts, Korean 150,000 here, 100,000 Korean wons there, being siphoned to a personal account registered in Lee's wife's name. Over 18 months, 340 million Korean wons had disappeared. Mrs. Park's son hadn't been in debt. He'd been systematically robbed by his business partner. Esther worked for 6 hours straight. Barely noticed when Kim brought her coffee. Somehow exactly how she took it, though she'd never told him. Barely noticed when daylight faded to evening. She was lost in the numbers, in the pattern, in the satisfaction of watching theft reveal itself. When she finally leaned back, she had everything. Complete documentation. Timeline. Paper trail. Everything needed to prove Lee Sang-jun had been stealing from his dead partner's mother. Done, she said aloud. Kim appeared in the doorway like he'd been waiting. Show me. She walked him through it. Pointed out every discrepancy, every hidden account, every fraudulent invoice. Watched his expression shift from interest to admiration. You're remarkable, he said when she finished. Heat crept up Esther's neck. She wasn't used to praise. Wasn't used to anyone looking at her work with anything except suspicion. It's just following the pattern, she mumbled. It's brilliance. Kim moved closer, not quite touching but near enough that she could feel his warmth. Most forensic accountants would need weeks to find what you found in 6 hours. And they wouldn't have caught half the details you did. Esther's breath hitched. The way he was looking at her, intense, focused, reminded her of that night in the ballroom. Like she was something worth watching. What happens now? She asked. Now we visit Lee Sang-jun. The confrontation happened the next morning at the landscaping company office in Songdong-gu, a strip mall space between a nail salon and a convenience store. Lee Sang-jun was a stocky man in his 40s, hands stained with dirt, confidence radiating from him like cologne. That confidence evaporated when Kim laid Esther's documentation on his desk. You have 48 hours to return the money, Kim said calmly. No threats. No raised voice. Just facts delivered with absolute certainty. All 340 million Korean wons won. Or I turn this over to the prosecutor's office, and Mrs. Park sues you in civil court. You'll lose the business, your home, probably your freedom. Lee's face went gray. I can't. You can. Kim's voice was ice. You've been stealing for 18 months. You know exactly where the money is. Transfer it back, or face the consequences. Lee looked at Esther. Really looked at her. And something flickered in his expression, recognition. You're her, he said. The woman from the Hansung case. The one who destroyed Director Han. Esther met his eyes without flinching. She'd done this before. Sat across from people who'd stolen, who justified it to themselves, who thought they were clever enough to hide it. She'd always been cleverer. 48 hours, Kim repeated. Then he stood, buttoned his jacket, and walked out. Esther followed. In the parking lot, her hands started shaking. Delayed adrenaline. That was, she couldn't find the word. Effective, Kim offered. He unlocked his car, a black Genesis sedan, and opened the passenger door for her. Terrifying, Esther admitted. But she got in. They drove in silence for a few minutes. Esther watched Seoul pass by through the window. Neighborhoods she used to know when she had a life, a career, a future. Strange how the city looked the same, even though everything about her had changed. He'll transfer the money, Kim said confidently. Men like Lee Sang-jun are cowards. They steal because they think no one's watching. The moment someone actually sees them, they fold. How do you know? Because I've done this 100 times. He glanced at her. And because you gave him no room to maneuver. Your documentation was perfect. He knows there's no defense, no loophole, no way out except compliance. Esther felt something warm bloom in her chest. Pride, maybe. Or just the simple satisfaction of being good at something again. What if he doesn't comply? She asked. Then I make his life very uncomfortable until he does. Kim's voice held an edge she hadn't heard before. Not violent, exactly. Just absolutely certain. I have resources Lee Sang-jun doesn't. Connections he can't match. And I'm significantly more patient than he is desperate. That sounds like a threat. It's a promise. Kim pulled into a parking garage in Gangnam. The work I do exists in gray zones, Esther. I won't pretend otherwise. But I draw lines. No physical violence. No illegal coercion. Just pressure applied strategically until people do what they should have done from the beginning. The right thing. They took the elevator up to Kim's office. The building was modern, all glass and steel, with Lumina Holdings occupying the top 3 floors. Esther had cleaned these offices for 6 months. Now she was walking through them as something else entirely. Kim's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Minji, looked up as they entered. Her expression shifted when she saw Esther. Surprise, then curiosity. "This is Esther David," Kim introduced. "She'll be joining us as senior forensic consultant. Please set up building access, email, everything she needs." Minji recovered quickly. "Of course. Welcome, Ms. David." Esther nodded, not trusting her voice. Senior forensic consultant. 3 days ago, she'd been scrubbing toilets. Now she had a title, an office, a purpose. "Get some rest," Kim said once they were back in her small office. "Tomorrow, we'll discuss other cases. Build your caseload. But today, you've done enough." Esther wanted to argue. Wanted to dive into the next case immediately, prove she could sustain this, that she wasn't just good for one brilliant afternoon. But exhaustion was catching up to her. 6 hours of intense focus, after 3 years of mental dormancy, had left her wrung out. "Thank you," she said instead. "For this. For believing I could still do it." Kim's expression softened. "You never lost the ability, Esther. You just lost the opportunity. I'm simply giving you back what you always had." The money transferred within 24 hours. All 340 million Korean wons won, plus an additional 20 million Korean wons that Kim had quietly added as interest for Mrs. Park's suffering. Lee Sang-jun closed his business the same day, probably worried Kim would come back with more uncomfortable questions. When Mrs. Park returned to sign the paperwork, she brought homemade kimchi and japchae in plastic containers. She hugged Esther so tightly that Esther couldn't breathe. Said things in Korean that made Esther's eyes burn with tears she hadn't let herself cry in 3 years. "Thank you. You gave me my son back. His honor. You made it right." After Mrs. Park left, Esther stood at the window of Kim's office, staring at Seoul spread below. Gangnam at sunset. All glass and steel and ambition stretching toward the horizon. 3 years ago, she'd been part of that ambition, one more person climbing toward success. Now she was just watching it from the outside. Except she wasn't outside anymore, was she? "I forgot," she whispered. Kim came to stand beside her. Close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Forgot what?" "What this feels like. Helping people. Using what I know to make things right." She turned to face him. "For 3 years, I convinced myself I was done with this work. That testifying against Director Han had cost me everything, so I should just stop. Be nobody. Stay invisible. You were never invisible to me." The words were quiet, but they landed with weight. Esther's breath caught. "Kim, dinner," he said. "Let me take you to dinner. To celebrate." She should say no. Should maintain professional boundaries. Should remember that mixing business with anything personal had never ended well for her. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Thank you so much for watching part 1. If you made it this far, then you already feel the chemistry building. That slow, dangerous pull between Esther and Kim that neither of them is ready to admit out loud. But listen, this is only the beginning. Because part 2 is where everything shifts. The dinner, the secrets he reveals, the truth about his world. And the moment Esther realizes she may have stepped into something far deeper than a simple job. You do not want to miss it. So make sure you like this video, leave a comment telling me what you think about Kim so far, and turn on notifications, because part 2 is coming. And trust me, it's even hotter, darker, and more intense than part 1.